So we looked at this PR a little while ago, which is just a feature to set centers on. So they're cropping centers. So in this particular one, the y-axis is relevant because of the way the image is resized at the other end of things. So you have the ability to move it. Oh, didn't we do the preview last time? I think we did the preview last time. Let's do that.
I'm sure I saw that last time. But I want to see. But that doesn't work anymore.
No, because I changed the theme. I've been not set up properly here.
Because I would expect when you click on the image, live on the left, you see the cropping.
Wrong image.
And everyone noticed that there is a nice edit blog button. That is new from last week. We talked about it.
We did. That's the one there. So hopefully this will actually work this time.
It's beautiful. It's great.
So we get to move it around in different places. Probably the point I wanted to make is that it's not going to do anything on the x-axis because of the way this is sized. So you're really only you're setting one. But the big change I just made was to. Sorry, does that make sense?
Yeah, but I'm saying haha for the next big change. I think I know what it is, because the issue you have when you click multiple times
is the problem of the disk filling factor.
Right.
So I've added the encryption settings if they are there. No, they're not. I need to turn them on. Why is that not on?
So you see the URL here. You didn't see, but not you, but everyone else. The URL is like ampersand crop equals, and you have some XY. What's the name? Coordinates in the URL, which means every time you get a new value, you have a new image, a new file, and you can overflow the size of on the disk if someone creates a bot and generates all the images for all the locations of the center. So the solution will be demo.
And I've just forgotten what the a bad demo because I'm not set up correctly.
You have documentation. That's okay. You can just copy paste from documentation.
Use tokenized query string. So that should probably do it. Okay, so what we're basically doing is when we generate the, where's the best one to look at? Probably the filters and the resize URL filter. When we build the query string, we have an option to now encrypt it. And when the query string is encrypted, it's just using the data protection, which is all cached, so we don't have to actually do the encryption too much, which happens here. And I'll just restart that so we can see that in a second. And then when we actually pass the commands in image sharp, we look at it. If it's got a token, which is the token for all of the commands, then it sets it gets those commands out and sets the command passer to accept what's been unencrypted. Let me see if that's going to work this time around. Right, so what we get now, instead of what you would have seen before, which was the height, width, and all the crop pictures in the URL, we just get a token. So that becomes safe because if we were to pass any other value, it's not going to be decrypted correctly, and it will just no-op the resize provider, and you'll just get the full-size image coming out, which is just kind of prevents that disk filling issue. I think there was a nice blog from Bertrand. That was a few years ago now, a couple of years ago now, kind of discussing the issues of around that, and how it's potentially possible to bring servers down by overfilling their disks. So the questions I kind of have is, sorry?
Do you cache? We talked about it. Do you cache the encryption values in memory?
Yeah, we do. We cache the encrypted values in memory. We actually have two caches. If I look,
we don't have to, because as long as the data processing key is stable, it will be decrypted, and the full token contains the full commands, which is necessary. Otherwise, every time you restart, then you will lose the old references. And caching is interesting here because you will spare something.
Yeah.
And it's safe.
I got errors from. It's safe. Yeah, so we're maintaining cache, which just saves a little bit of serialization, because this will happen. One of these, this one here happens on both of them happen on every request. So we kind of optimize it a little bit. So if you've got 4 or 5 width and height commands and a couple of crops that are all the same, it's the same cache key that's used.
So I disconnected because I touched my headset and it stopped my meeting, but I'm back and I trust what you said. Thank you. And it's still recording.
Cool. So the question I'll actually have on it is whether or not we should turn this on by default.
That's a good question.
Because
there is lots of pain with the predefined values. Oh, that's also solving the predefined values, by the way. Did you mention that?
So I haven't solved predefined values yet, because that was another kind of topic.
No, but it's solving. Oh, you're not.
It solves it. Let me go and see why it doesn't necessarily solve it completely. So the predefined values that we have by default are these, which are the width and height settings. So with this encryption option, we can actually now allow anything through and just change the predefined values to be the ones that you want to support in the media profiles feature that I added, is kind of my thinking.
Okay, so it solves that. It solves the DOS attack with the predefined values. Well, at least the predefined values, they are like, now they will just be allowed values for the media profiles, but at least we can use any value in the resize URLs. Hello, is it me this time or is it Dean?
I think it's Dean because I don't see him. Yeah.
Okay, that's not me, but it happens exactly the same thing happened to me. Like it froze, I couldn't hear anyone, and then I tapped my headset and I got disconnected. Yeah, so I was saying that we don't need to define predefined values for the media, which was set to prevent people from generating URLs. It had to be based on these values, so it was limiting the number of files that someone could create. Because now to create the file, we can just create. Nobody can forge a URL for a custom size anymore, so we don't have to protect it. And the list can just be used for the media profiles to provide a list of predefined values that people can use to do profiles. But same thing. I mean, it's just a hint. Anyone could put any value in the profiles. That's not a big issue. It's just to help people find good values. Question remaining being, do we want this feature on by default? We might. The only decision might be to say, well, we could have it by default and people could just disable it if they don't want it, if they don't like the UIs like this. But in terms of perf, it's free because the keys are, again, limited based on the images, the profiles, and the combinations of cropping sizes that you are using. So even let's say we have 1,000, we'll accept him. So Dean is Dean back. Doesn't work when I accept him. So even if you have 1,000 possible combinations of, or possible, or actually used URLs, combination of URLs you are using to render images, then we'll have 1,000 keys and unencrypted keys in memory. So the decoding and encoding, or decrypting and encrypting, should be as quick as a hash lookup. So that's good. I can't accept him. I'm
back again.
Oh, it's optimal deviation now that he's joining. Okay. So we were saying, Dean, that about enabling it by default. I mentioned the pros and cons, and I think we can because it's free theoretically, minus some memory usage. Because, and also, are you caching for encryption and decryption? Meaning, when you generate the URL, you also don't encrypt the values, you just look up in the table for the encrypted value.
Yeah, it's cached on both sides.
Perfect. So I think we could enable it as a feature, and then if people want to disable it, they can just disable it if they don't like it.
Cool.
And then,
I mean, the only concern I had about putting it on by default was that it will change everybody's query strings. So slight change in behavior.
Yes.
But I think that's probably worthwhile to get rid of the pain of the allowed file extensions.
yes, I think so. And you keep the extension.
Yeah, I'll keep the property because it's the one that's going to be used in the media profiles feature. So it's the kind of standard stuff. But it just makes it so much easier for somebody who just needs to get get a button size small or something, or a button image size small, to just be able to provide the exact one that they want.
Awesome.
Cool. So yeah, if you agree with me on that, then I'll make those changes to the PR. The only other question I kind of had was what to call it. I've called it centers at the moment because that's what ImageSharp called it. Center.
Center? Is that a word or?
Yeah, center as in CENTER. Right.
Oh, center. Why do you use a British accent?
I use a British accent.
I use a French accent. That's better accent.
Kiwi accent.
So, the cropping thing you mean, or the?
Yeah, because it's not quite cropping because you can't.
No,
like,
it doesn't.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that's okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Media oil. What's the name? What's the feature name? The total feature name? Just Media Center or?
Media centers at the moment.
Okay, I can't think about.
But yeah, no, if that makes sense for anybody, if anybody's got any comments on the naming, put a comment on the PR, please.
Okay. And for the media tokenization, you called it tokenizer. I'm not sure I like the name. I would more use something like URL obfuscation or something like that. That makes more sense. But at the same time, it's a default feature, so nobody will have to look at it and enable it or maybe disable it. That's it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I need a command in the query string, which is token equals, because I need to be able to pass it. So that's why I call it token, because that's a commonish thing to have in a query string.
I see, like a SAS token.
Like a SAS token or a email reset token.
But the feature itself, and you have a token as the query string. The feature itself is ready to encrypt the URL, to obfuscate it, just not that token. I don't know. The technical aspect is tokenizing. The logical aspect is really obfuscating.
Yeah. I'll have a think. I don't disagree. It was
Okay.
difficult to name.
Does anyone see anything about this? Because I don't think I've seen that implemented anywhere. We thought about it while thinking about the issues that were, and first we said, let's use a whitelist. But at the same time, this looks so simple. I'm afraid that we are missing some obvious things in terms of security. Because even it could even be by default in ImageSharp. I don't see why it would not. So
yeah, I'm not sure if because I've worked with ImageSharp and Image Processor historically for a while, and it's definitely been a thing that I've been able to do with applications. Is kind of overrun them a bit, but I'm not sure that anybody's really picked up on it as a strong issue. Could be wrong.
Yeah. In terms of distribution, like cloud support, if we have multiple nodes, the data protection key will be the same because you will have to use a data protection key that is shared across your nodes. That's a different issue. And the cache will be per node. So that's fine. Like every node will compute the hash once. The hash.
Yeah, that's how that's how I've kept the
so
cache.
we don't need to,
node.
Yeah, we don't need to synchronize the hashes. Unless you, even if you have like millions of images, I mean, each node will compute that. We might want to add a limit on the table though. So
I've put 6 hours on the entry, and
but
it's configurable
it's
so
not,
that they don't stay in memory for too long.
Okay.
Because if it's an image that actually gets deleted and the server's been up for 3 months, you don't need to be holding on to it.
It's a memory cache, so you put you can put sliding expiration.
Yeah, I think I put 6 hours on, but I'll probably make it configurable.
Okay, good. You don't even need to do that first. I mean, if you have a specific amount of time, I mean, that's okay. Good, perfect.
Yeah, maybe.
That's awesome.